Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third Phoenix General Membership Meeting. It's time for an update. We want to know what's latest with you. Update your details and send your photo. A joint general membership meeting among Phoenix, MBC, and MAP with keynote speaker Honorable Ray Leonardo B. Guerrero, Commissioner of Customs. This is on March 17, Thursday, from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. The Professional Development Committee is having its first economic briefing on March 18, Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. Join the webinar by the Asian Member Institutes of the International Association of Financial Executives Institutes, also known as EFA. Listen to the experts regarding the Great Resignation and trends impacting the future of work on March 23. Be reminded of your to-do list for the BIR and SEC filings. Catch the latest on these from our resource speakers, Mr. Richard Ibarra and Attorney Marites C. This is on March 24 at 2 p.m. From 2009 to 2019, stroke remains the second leading cause of death and one of the top 5 leading causes of disability in the Philippines. Join the Stroke of Luck webinar with Dr. Esther Bitanga on March 24, 5 p.m. to know the signs and symptoms of stroke before it becomes worse. On March 25, Friday, 2 to 4 p.m., the Arts and Culture Committee organized a webinar entitled Interrogating Presidential Papers, the Ferdinand Marcos Diaries. Now, let us welcome our host. He is the 2020 Phoenix President and Independent Director of PDS Holdings Corporation, Mr. Jose Jerome Pascual III.
Good afternoon, Phoenix members and guests. Maybe to start off and to formally open the program, may I call on our President, Mr. Michael Arcatomi Gorin, to call this meeting to order. Mike?
Thank you. Thank you, Jeng. So good afternoon, everyone. I would like to formally call our third general membership meeting to order.
Thank you very much, President Mike. Once again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third Phoenix General Membership Meeting sponsored by the Women in Finance Committee. I wish you all a happy International Women's Day. Let's all break the bias. This general membership meeting is aired live simultaneously on Phoenix's official Facebook page and YouTube channel. Now, may I request everyone to join us in prayer, to be followed by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Heavenly Father, you are our Creator, our light, our wisdom and strength. May we ask for your guiding hand to lead us through this forum today and every day as we accomplish our work and various tasks. We pray for joy, enthusiasm, and fulfillment in our work. May we conduct ourselves and our business dealings in an environment of fairness, respect, and compassion. May we ask you to enter the hearts and minds of our leaders and countrymen. Give them strength, wisdom, so that they may lead us through these difficult times with honesty, integrity, humility, and selflessness. Finally, we pray that you extend your healing hand over us, our families, and our nation, and help us overcome this health crisis that has claimed so many lives, including the lives of many of our friends, family members, and colleagues. Please heal those who are sick and guide the hands and minds of our doctors and nurses as they care for them. All these we humbly pray Amen.
May I call once again our President, Mike Gorin, for the President's message and report.
Thank you, Chair Jeng. Good afternoon, my dear Phoenix members and guests. I hope you're having a nice week so far. We're already in the middle of the week, and it has only been around 3 short weeks since our last GMM, Feb 22. So first, we've been keeping ourselves busy, as you all know, with voter education-related events. On Feb 24 was the webinar by the Good Governance Committee and J Phoenix, entitled Your Vote Matters. During the event, we also launched the video making contest, which intends to promote the importance of one's vote. So kindly visit the J Phoenix Facebook page for the complete mechanics. And then on March 8th was the event spearheaded by Sherphil, and it was supported by Phoenix. Boto mo, kinabukasan natin. Thank you to everyone who attended this. I'm sure it was a much appreciated event. Next Monday, next week, no Monday, we will be having a dialogue with the BSP to discuss how to address digital vote buying. I am equally hopeful and positive that we will arrive at practical measures to reduce and mitigate this issue. So Phoenix, we're trying to do our part. And of course, it goes without saying that we rolled out webinars closer to the business side of things. Still, again, on Feb 24 around noontime, the ICT committee rolled out its maiden webinar for the year, blockchain applications and real-world use cases. Everyone is of the opinion that Philippine business is merely touching the surface of blockchain's application on how we do business. Phoenix will definitely continue to be at the forefront in leading the change towards a wider and truly universal application of blockchain. Then the following week, March 1, Phoenix was one of the organization partners of the Manila Times for the Economic Outlook 2022 series entitled Looking Beyond Pandemic Endgame. And then a few days after that, March 4, Phoenix was again a partner organization in the SEC's 2022 SEC CAN webinar series entitled As Easy as SEC, How to File Annual Reports. I hope that a lot of you were able to attend that very informative session. And then starting March 11, the Phoenix Academy rolled out its 2022 course covering capital markets and fixed income securities analysis. Unfortunately, registration is already done, but the Academy, they have several other similar sessions, probably 3 or 4 more the rest of the year. So stay tuned for those next items. And then on March 23, next week, please don't miss the IFA's webinar entitled From the Great Resignation to the Great Reimagination, What's Ahead in 2022. 2 speakers from our friends from Deloitte Consulting will be the featured speakers. And then actually some members have been asking, so being a Phoenix member, does it automatically make you benefit from IFA events? Yes, it does. So definitely look forward not just towards Phoenix events, but as well as these international events, such as the ones being organized by the IFA. And then next week, March 24, the Tax and Legal Committee of PHINEX, together with TMAP, are rolling out a tax webinar, Basics and More Income Tax Filing and SEC Online Filing To-Dos. So, but in addition, the Arts and Culture Committee rolled out their second webinar for the year on timepieces and jewelry on March 4 in the afternoon. Congratulations to our very own Carlo Lanzatin for winning one of the grand prizes that afternoon. And if I recall it correctly, perfect timing because it was the birthday of his wife that week as well. So congratulations indeed. And now I'm looking forward to the Arts and Culture Committee's next webinar, which will be on March 25, where we will have the much sought after historian and speaker, Ambeth Ocampo, as our guest of honor. Please register for that. And I would also like to acknowledge the efforts by the membership committee. We had a very nice tree planting event 2 Saturdays ago, March 5, at Three Springs Mountain Park. And it was our face-to-face fellowship activity since 2020. So it was very memorable indeed for those who attended. And then as recent as last week, I attended the Phoenix Foundation's event with TSPI or Tulay sa Pagunlad Incorporated. Please expect to see more events with TSPI and with other partner organizations of the foundation. And as you all know, every March we celebrate Women's Month. And it is always a good reminder that each one of us has a responsibility to create a gender equal world, free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination. This is not just the right thing to do, but it also makes business sense. As business leaders, our sphere of influence extends beyond our personal connections and into the workplace. All of us, we have the unique opportunity to shape corporate culture and implement policies that forge inclusivity and equality. So since it is Women's Month, I would like to share some of the conclusions and insights from KPMG's 2021 study entitled Advancing the Future of Women in Business, Executive Women on Resilience, the Art of the Comeback. Around 1,200 female executives were surveyed. And I believe we're showing a short summary for everyone's reference. First conclusion would be on defining resilience. Nearly all, around 96% of the executive women surveyed acknowledged adjusting the way they lead or motivate their teams due to the events over the last 15 months or so. When asked to define resilience, they use words like optimism, adaptability, and agility. But when asked about showing resilience, as opposed to defining resilience, they use words like empathy, compassion, and grace. I'd like to think that for most of us, this is a confirmation of the changes that we had to go through as a result of the pandemic. In terms of expanding workload, taking on more work is not a surprise. On top of their pre-existing scope of work, around 64% of executive women reported that the scope of their management responsibility unexpectedly changed or expanded due to the pandemic. As a result, they had to prioritize the need to communicate frequently, listen more, and foster inclusive communities. Next would be on testing leadership. A little more than two-thirds or 67% of survey respondents said they had previously led teams through 1 to 10 crises in their entire careers. However, it served as their first true test of resilience and leadership in a massive scale, given the pandemic. And then fourthly would be in relation to valuing relationships. Professional networks and mentors lent valuable support. In fact, based on the survey, around 84% of executives said that mentors played a vital role in developing their resilience. Meanwhile, around 47% said that the support from their professional network was instrumental to their wellness and growth over the last year. And then lastly, in relation to cultures, more than half, around 53% of executive women believe their company's culture has changed with the evolution of their virtual workplace. by placing a renewed focus on individual wellness and team inclusivity. Work-life balance has become work-life integration. So working from home is the new norm. So before I end, again, I would like to personally welcome our guests this afternoon, all of whom would be introduced in due time. So again, thank you, Ms. Lovely Basiliote of the Philippine Business for Education. Next, one of the country's top broadcast journalists, Ms. Cheche Lazaro of Pro Productions Incorporated. Welcome. And Ms. Myla Villanueva, the chairperson of PPCRV, was here earlier, but during the Q&A, she will be represented by Dr. William Yu. And then lastly, thank you to the Women in Finance Committee, led by its chairperson, Danielle Del Rosario. Thank you, Danielle. Liaison Director, Terry Magleo. And our moderator later, Ms. Malu Cristobal. And of course, to the Vice Chairwomen of the Women in Finance Committee, namely Ms. Nikki Tang and Ms. Mildred Vidangpon. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, and mabuhay ang Phoenix.
Thank you very much, President Mike. And I think from what you've shared in your report in KPMG, our Women in Finance Committee is an excellent example of how women are breaking the glass ceiling. So well done to our ladies, our women in finance. The next, before I go to the next part of our program, you will note that our very efficient secretariat have posted on the chat box the links to our upcoming webinars. So please take the opportunity to register and join us in those events. The next session or the next section of our program this afternoon is the induction of the Phoenix Academy chairs. I am the chairman of the Phoenix Academy, and I will be inducting the 2022 Phoenix Academy chair for each committee. So let me run down their names. For the Capital Markets Professional Program, we have Jesus Mariano P. Ocampo as co-chair and Virgilio Ochua as co-chair, so the Manny and Vio. For our CFO Development Program, we have Jaime E. Ismael, Jimmy, as chairman. And for our IT Enterprise and Governance Committee, we have Reynaldo C. Lugtu, Ray. So we now see their photos on the screen and their live videos. I now will be inducting them. So may I please request all of you to please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Ray Lugtu, Jr.,
Having been appointed as state your position of the Phoenix Academy Incorporated,
having been appointed as chair of the IT
co-chair of
governance,
Phoenix Academy,
do hereby solemnly swear
do
do
hereby
hereby
solemnly
solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability
that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability
my duties and responsibilities in the pursuit of its goals and objectives,
my duties and
responsibilities in the pursuit of
in the pursuit of its objectives,
that I will protect and uphold its constitution and bylaws,
that I will protect
uphold its
and
constitution
uphold its constitution and bylaws,
that I will abide by its code of ethics,
that I will abide by its code of ethics,
that I will observe the highest professional, moral, and ethical standards,
that I will
observe
observe
the
the highest moral ethical standards,
and that I voluntarily impose this obligation upon myself
and
that
that
I voluntarily
impose this obligation
myself
upon myself
without mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without mental
mental
reservation
and purpose of evasion.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Chairman of the Phoenix Academy.
Thank you.
All right, so now let's move on to another induction, the induction of the new members of Phoenix. May I now call on the chairman of the membership committee, Mr. Carlos Real Caloy Cervantes to introduce our new members. Caloy?
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We will now induct the following new members. I shall call on the name. I'll state the company position, the company, and sponsors. The first would be Warren R. Between, partner of SGV and Company, sponsored by Wilson P. Tan. Second is Claudine Del Rosario, first vice president of RCBC Capital Corporation, sponsored by Jose Luis Gomez. Third is Janice V. Gruenberg, country manager, Philippines, FIS Global, sponsored by Ray Lugto Jr. Number 4 would be Ana Marie M. Pabellon, partner, Deloitte Philippines, Navarro Ampere and Company, sponsored by Michael Arcatomy H. Guarin. Number 5 would be Luis Miguel G. Vaca, CFO of Unilab Inc., sponsored by Joselito Diga and Michael Arcatomy H. Guarin. Number 6 is Cyril Jasmine B. Valencia, partner of SGV and Company, sponsored by Wilson P. Tan. Number 7 and last, Nanette P. Villalobos, VP Treasurer, Finma Corporation, sponsored by Pythagoras Beyond Jr. To add solemnity to the occasion, may I request kindly that all members open your camera, and may I call on our president, Michael Arcatomy H. Guarin, for their oath of membership. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Caloy, for always mentioning my full name. So again, welcome to our incoming new members. So may I ask all of you to please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state your name.
Claudine Del Rosario,
Having been accepted as a member of the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines,
having accepted as a member of the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines,
do hereby solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability
do hereby solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability
my duties and responsibilities in the pursuit of its goals and objectives.
my duties and responsibilities in the pursuit of its goals and objectives,
That I will protect and uphold its constitution and bylaws.
that I will protect and uphold its constitution and bylaws,
That I will abide by its code of ethics. That I will observe the highest professional, moral, and ethical standards.
that I will abide by its code of ethics, that I will observe the highest professional, moral, and ethical standards,
And that I voluntarily impose this obligation upon myself without mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
and that I voluntarily impose this obligation upon myself without mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, everyone. Welcome to Phoenix.
Thank you.
Congratulations and welcome to Phoenix.
Congrats, Ana. Congrats, Mike.
You, Mike.
Once again, thank you very much, President Mike. And again, congratulations and welcome to our new members. At this point, may I call on the liaison director of the Women in Finance Committee, Ms. Esther Terry Magleo, to give her opening message. Terry.
Good afternoon and a blessed afternoon to everyone, and to my beloved countrymen, good afternoon here and abroad. Welcome to our Women in Finance opening salvo for 2022 in ang bayan, the importance of responsible electorate in a democracy. By the way, happy International Women's Day today. Very striking and timely indeed, the theme of our Phoenix General Membership meeting today compels each one of us to help strengthen the future of our beloved country by reminding us to continue fighting for freedom that we Filipinos have been privileged of. Actually, this is the first time that Phoenix GMM has been open to public due to the importance of the forthcoming elections come May 9, 2022. Clearly, this call to action, a heartwarming as it seems, entails command for responsibility, requires allegiance and commitment. Yes, we are all asked to help shape the future of our country, not only for ourselves, but most importantly, for the future generation. We're asked to choose leaders that are honest, transparent, men of integrity, and would place the nation's welfare as their top agenda. We're all aware that our country is facing enormous challenges from health, economic, and psychological crisis. And we at times cannot help ourselves but ask, what is the future of our fellow Filipinos? We feel unfortunate of the massive disinformation and history that has been twisted, revised through the different social platform. To oppose all of this, we should exercise to choose the right leaders that will promote truth, honesty, accountability, integrity, good governance, respect of law, rule of law, respect of life, and defense of what belongs to the Filipino people. Needless to say, we should denounce any candidate that will exploit our countrymen's poverty through vote buying. We should be critical in scrutinizing the records of candidates and what they have actually done, especially during the pandemic. Our three resource speakers are the best in the fields. Ms. Myla Villanueva, or represented here also by Dr. Tan, currently the chairperson of PPCRB, Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, and MDI, a techie company, will pitch in the spirit of volunteerism to ensure truthful and honest elections. We'd also love to hear from Ms. Lab Basiliote when she talks about the role of education in values and ethics formation for the youth. As you know, the Filipino youth comprises 56% of our voting population. And last but not least, who doesn't know Cheche Lazaro, our favorite broadcaster, pro broadcaster, very well known to speak on truth and transparency in journalism, especially during these critical times. We also remember our fellow men in Ukraine who are against Russia. Just like these great ladies who continue to pursue a difference, I could not help but remember how this year's celebration of Women's Month can be best depicted through a photo showing the baby strollers left by Polish moms from Poland, at the train station of Ukrainian moms who may need them for when they arrive in Poland with their children to seek refuge. Let us all continue to pray for them. Just like these strong and commendable women doing extraordinary means to make certain a clean election, our company Paynamics also won with Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and all the other fintech organizations in ensuring that control measures are in place to prevent any vote buying through the platforms that we offer. I cannot end without expressing our deepest appreciation to the organizers of this event, our President Mike Marin, past President Jen Pascual, and our MC today, Chair Daniel Del Rosario, Moderator par excellence Malu Cristobal, Vice Chair Nikki Tang, Vice Chair Mildred, and more importantly, our Phoenix Secretariat Mike Binluan, Jeff Aljon, Rafi, Marga, Lynn, and also, of course, our Programs and Meetings Committee led by Ned Goseco and Committee Chair Net de Jesus. With all your hard work and effort in making this event possible, you indeed are doing a great service to the Filipino people. In this International Women's Month, let's all make a difference in the lives of our fellow men. To quote a beautiful reminder from Sharon Salzberg, New York Times best-selling author, she said, voting is the expression of our commitment to ourselves, to one another, to this country, and to the world. Let us vote wisely, responsibly, and courageously. Thank you all, and God bless the Philippines.
Thank you very much, Terry. And we now go to the main part of our program, which is our speakers for today. Later, after that, we will have a panel discussion. Now some house rules before we begin. I'd like to remind that all participants today, if you want to send in your questions for our guest speakers, please do so through the Q&A button only. We will try to accommodate as many questions as time permits. If there are questions that come on the chat box, so we will try to tackle them as well, but priority will be given to those in the Q&A tab. Now, to introduce our guest speakers for today, may I call on the co-vice chair of the Women in Finance Committee, Ms. Nikki Tang. Nikki?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Jen. I'm very happy and honored to introduce three lovely and admirable women who continue to inspire us and make a difference. Our very first guest speaker for this afternoon is Ms. Myla Villanueva. Myla is a technology pioneer with more than 30 years of leadership and experience in the local and global technology industry. She's a pioneer in mobile software, cloud, big data analytics, and security. She has founded 5 successful startups. 4 have had some of the most successful exits and M&As in the Philippine tech industry. She founded MDI Group, which has been serving digital transformation and technology solutions to telecommunications, banking and finance, utilities, and government institutions in the Philippines for 33 years. Myla also has served as an international Myla also served in international organizations such as the GSM Association, Global Telecom Women's Network, and the Vice Chair of Asia Society Philippines. She's a longtime trustee of Go Negosyo and the World Wildlife Fund Philippines. Myla is currently the chairperson of the Philippine Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, a nonprofit and accredited citizens arm for clean, fair, transparent, and peaceful elections in the country. PPCRV has 100,000 volunteers every election cycle. Myla is Ernst & Young's first Woman Entrepreneur of the Year in 2003, named 10 Outstanding Women in the Nation's Service in 2010 in the field of science and technology, and also named as Global Philippine Executive of the Year awardee during 2021 by Asia CEO Awards. Myla has also been cited as one of Asia's most influential, the Impact List 2020 by Tatler, Hong Kong. Our next guest speaker that I'm very honored to also again introduce is Ms. Love Basilote. Love Basilote is a human capital development and education specialist with significant experience in nonprofit management program, public policy, and communications. She is currently the Executive Director of Philippine Business for Education, a nonprofit organization founded in 2006 by top CEOs in the country. PBEd is the business community's response to the need for greater education and economy alignment. Our vision is for all Filipinos to have access to education system that provides them with the needed competency and values to lead productive lives and successful careers while serving as good citizens of this nation, according to Ms. Love. Love is an independent director of a fintech startup. She has a master's degree from Harvard University and bachelor's in political science from the Ateneo de Manila University. And last but not the least, it's an honor also to introduce Ms. Cheche Lazaro, who is the founding president of Pro Productions Incorporated and Pro Media Productions Incorporated, PMFI. Lazaro was also the host of the Probe Team, the first and longest running investigative news magazine show in the country. The show has won several local and international awards for its factual content and good production values. University professor turned broadcast journalist, Cheche first burst into the male-dominated media working with the American Broadcasting Corporation. In 1985, during the twilight of the Marcos dictatorship, she has won the respect of her peers and the public as a reporter and producer of pioneering television programs such as The Probe Team, 5 and Up, which is an educational show for the youth, Cheche Lazaro Presents, which is a lifestyle and leisure travelogue, Game Plan, a sports program, and Probe Profiles, a public affairs show. She was also given the Gawad Plaridel Award by the University of the Philippines for her significant contributions to local television and broadcast journalism. She has received 2 doctorates of humanities from the Philippine Women's University and the Ateneo de Naga University. Cheche is also the recipient of the partial McLuhan University. In its 30-year run as a production company, Probe has put together an extensive collection of archival material. Probe Archives is now digitally converted and made accessible to the general public. PMFI, for its part, continues to train media practitioners in the country from all over the ASEAN region. Today, former members of Probe Productions continue to make positive contributions to local and international media organizations. Of this, Cheche is most proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. We will now proceed with, I believe it's a video presentation from Ms. Myla Villanueva.
Good afternoon to our friends at Phoenix. Thank you for having me here today. I'm here to talk about how the PPCRV is preparing to protect the sanctity of our votes in the national elections in May 2022. For some of you who do not know, PPCRV is a national, political, but non-partisan lay movement that works assiduously to promote clean, honest, accurate, meaningful, and peaceful elections. We've been very busy at work, and we are expecting 500,000 volunteers from all over the country to join our mission to be present in about 107,000 precincts on election day. Here, we will conduct poll watching, run voters' assistance desks to help our voters find their precincts and generally assist in the voting centers. And we are also, at the end of the evening, collecting 107,000 election returns that are produced by the vote counting machines that tallies the votes in the precinct. As some of you know, the vote counting machines transmit data to national servers of the COMELEC and what you call the transparency server of the PPCRV. It is our work that then the physical ERs are all brought to Manila in our command center, the University of Santo Tomas, in order that we can match the results of the election returns that are physical to the election returns that are digital. That is the crux of our work on election day, but a lot of work is ongoing right now to train volunteers across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And we are also, aside from the training, establishing information for them on the number of precincts in the various voting centers and in the various provinces. This means that we work a lot with the COMELEC, both in challenging but also in supporting the work that they are conducting. They are working very hard. I must assure all of you at Phoenix, not perfect, but nonetheless really preparing very hard for the elections. Yes, we are now present in Santa Rosa and in the National Printing Office. It was difficult at first because of the pandemic, but that is moving smoothly. We will still see the ballots and the vote counting machines as they make their way in the logistics companies and in the hubs. And on or about a week before election day, we have what you call the final testing and sealing, where 10 sample ballots are tested against the VCM on random voting by watchers of different political parties and the PPCRV to ensure that the vote counting machines are working. Now, this is quite a lot of work, and we really do need for everyone to volunteer. If you can't, please encourage your nieces and nephews, your kids to volunteer. It is a very powerful and transformational experience. I was once a young volunteer, and it does change your mind about the fragility of our democracy and the need to really take care of it. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. Please volunteer and support your lay coordinators in the different parishes, and we definitely need your help. Thank you, Phoenix, for all your support and giving me a chance to talk to you this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Ms. Myla Villanueva. I'd like now to call on our next speaker, Ms. Lovelyn Basilote.
Hello, everyone. My name is Love Basiliote, and as was mentioned, I am the Executive Director of Philippine Business for Education. Thank you so much to Phoenix for inviting me to this event. I am honored and privileged to be here with you all today. I was asked to speak in the next 5 minutes about the role of education in values and ethics formation in the youth, the decision makers of the future. First, let me start with a caveat. Education really is a lifelong process. It doesn't just happen in schools. Following the arc of a typical person's life, education starts from the cradle to the grave. Arguably, our first conscious exposure to the transmission and reception of values and ethical systems happen in the home. So like finishing your plate, sharing your toys, saying sorry and thank you. We learn these things through our parents, siblings, cousins. We then bring our values and ethics systems into the societal institutions we move into as we get older, like kindergarten, schools, the workplace. And then there are also the many spaces we move in currently, both physical and virtual. With the dawn of the digital age, we all have to navigate other worlds, metaverses, full of influencers and anonymous figures whose mindsets and beliefs are diverse beyond imagination. So education is really a dynamic process, both active and passive, that happens as we all go through life. Now, that said, let me go into the more common image of active education, the part of the process that actually happens in schools. If we were to situate schools in the development of our personal and societal values and ethics systems, they would be in the all-important transitional space between the family and society. They serve as important institutional safe spaces that bridge the home, society, and universes we all live in. When we attend school, we encounter additional adult figures as well as our peers who also have their own personal value systems. In schools, we are taught values and ethics through a curriculum that is designed to transmit societal values like merit, free speech, inclusion, and equality. We also have teachers who are trained to teach the skills we need to resolve conflict, to make decisions, and to reflect our value systems in our everyday lives. We also learn from our peers and assimilate societal norms in schools. And so schools are therefore there to provide the youth a more structured and pedagogical approach to worldview building that will help them develop a framework that they can use as a lens to view and participate in society. With this lens, they can navigate the world around them with a critical eye that can judge our nation's past and decide our nation's future. In an ideal world, schools, education's role is to build a values and ethics system that protects those who are vulnerable while fostering inclusivity, acceptance, and tolerance. Unfortunately, the truth is far from ideal. When it comes to providing a learning environment that enables the youth to grow into respectful, decent, and productive adults, Philippine schools, based on data, are lagging behind. I say this because, according to the TIMSS 2019, 45% of our fourth graders report that bullying occurs weekly. The global average of participating countries is only 8%. Now, 40% of our 15-year-olds report that they are frequently bullied, while the global average of participating countries in the PISA is only, again, 8%. Teachers and school administrators are insufficiently aware that this is going on. And so if our schools are not really providing this environment where a safe environment where our students and our youth are able to develop their value systems because they experience bullying, we're really in danger of not building a generation where they have the critical thinking, the value system that could further our democracy. Compounding this problem is our personal worldviews are also constantly under attack from those who seek to harm and those who stand idly by. So in personal bubbles, these can be in the form of teachers who turn a blind eye to bullying, or friends who disrespect personal boundaries. And beyond that, there are also those who spread fake news and compromise freedom of expression. So with all these factors in play, schools play a big role in intentionally reinforcing social norms, ethics, and value systems. Schools, during the formal education years of a person's life, can be a good counterbalance to other forces that corrupt a person's values. Importantly, schools can give us the tools to critically think and form ethical and value systems, both at the level of the individual and society. And so we have to ensure that our schools are playing their all-important role well. So now going back to my original caveat of education happening at the intersections of the home, larger society, and even virtual spaces. We at Philippine Business for Education are taking our role very seriously in more actively shaping the youth's ethical and values systems. So we have initiatives like civica.ph and Eduk Naman, where we complement what already exists in the schools and online with quality educational content on civic education. In both of these efforts, we make it our business to help young people become more informed and active citizens committed to upholding and preserving democratic institutions, values, and principles. We also hope to build a community with a strong voice, encouraging everyone, especially the youth, to take action for a better education for every Filipino. So all told, education definitely has a role to play in the development of one's own ethics and values systems. Education, though, is a shared responsibility as it is a lifelong process. So similarly, ethics and value systems development is also a shared responsibility that lies in the intersection of our experiences in the home, schools, workplace, online spaces, and society as a whole. The more we move away from a siloed view of responsibility, the more we can build a world that holds ethics and value systems that ensures peace and prosperity for all. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to the discussion later.
Thank you very much, Ms. Love Basiliote. I'd like to now call in Ms. Cheche Lazaro.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here with you today, and I thank you for the opportunity of sharing with you something about media. I'm very grateful to Love for pointing out to us that education is very critical in trying to shape the minds of our youth. She spoke about lenses, and I think I'd like to relate the use of the word lenses, because today in our media environment, there is a new, well, not so new, but relatively new craze that our young people are addicted to. And this is social media. Today, I'd like to also refer to fake news, two words that are a contradiction in terms. Because when we say news, according to our old beliefs, news is a source of information that we can trust, that we can count on. When we say that we heard it on the news, there is some amount of credibility. But with the introduction of the term fake, it has really turned the news, the word news, and the meaning of news on its head. May we now start with a short video about social media and its influence. Watch this.
my God! Tingnan mo to! Tingnan mo to! Nakakatakot yung post, oh. Tingnan mo, sabi ng isang expert, lahat daw ng vaccinated people ay mamamatay within 2 years. Sabi niya pa i-cremate daw lahat ng body natin.
Naku sis, tingnan mo naman yung post, oh. Halatang edited, tapos pinatong lang yung caption.
Totoo ba? Eh, kilala ko yung expert na yan.
Ayun na nga, inedit lang yan na kung sino man para magpakalat ng fake news. Fake news tong post na to.
Ano nga ba ang totoo tungkol sa fake news? Bago mo sabihin wala, liwanagin muna natin. Ang fake news ay oxymoron. Dalawa o higit pang salitang magkasalungat. Parang ano lang yan eh, open secret, sound of silence, clearly confused. Ganon. So if there's information that you feel is not true, mag-ingat ka. Because not all are fake. Not all are news. Sabi nga ng isang eksperto, if it is news, it isn't fake. And if it is false, then it cannot be news. Makes perfect sense, di ba?
Fake news to? Paano mo ba nalaman? Turuan mo naman ako.
Check mo yung website, oh. Sino ba tong nag-post na to?
Kaya nga dito sa fact-checking campaign ng Probe, iwas-iwas kami sa fake news. Literally. Instead, we will use these terms more frequently para maswak. Misinformation and disinformation. Ano nga bang difference? Disinformation is false info created to intentionally harm the subject. Misinformation naman, walang intensyon na makapanakit, pero mali pa rin dahil misleading. This is Check X, fact-checking campaign. Sa mga susunod na araw, marami pa kayong malalaman from us. Let us help you spot the true from the not. I am Makoy Dubs.
Thank you. This is a campaign that we have mounted in Pro Productions that we are doing currently to check what is coming out in the news, or what we call fake news. Let's go back to how fake news originated. This was, fake news is now a favorite way of populist leaders to insult critical journalism. When they see that they are being criticized, that their regimes, for example, are being called to account for what they're doing, they say that's fake news, that's not correct. It has now become an international political catchphrase, and the word fake news has now gone all over the world, and people are using it to describe what they perceive to be not true or not correct. But this was really started by leaders who felt assaulted by media, who were aggressive in finding out if what they were doing, in holding them to account for what they were doing. It really began in the year 2017, when political leaders in many countries all over the world, Burma, Vietnam, in the United States, and in these countries, including the Philippines, publicly accused journalists of reporting what they call fake news. Our own president in the Philippines, President Duterte, waged a very public war on specific media outlets, labeling them, calling their news bullshit or fake news. And one of these victims was, of course, Rappler, the digital news site. In 2018, the government announced it would revoke the license of Rappler. Of course, that has not happened, but there were several threats to Rappler and other news outlets that were criticizing him very heavily. For example, according to an SWS survey in December of 2021, 51% of us Filipinos find it difficult to spot fake news on TV, radio, or social media. It really goes back to the time when television was a trusted outlet of news. We would say, ay, sinabi sa TV na uulan bukas, we half expect that it will rain tomorrow, or that the price of gasoline will go up, or that there will be a rollback if it is announced on TV. But with the advent of social media, which has really consumed all of us in our lives, in fact, I like to tease people and say that the telephone is really an extension of your arm, because you hardly find anyone, including those who are with us in this session today, without the telephone nearby that you can just pick up anytime. And social media has invaded that space. Our young people, Love was talking about education and the lenses that are now being used. One very powerful lens that is evident today is social media. Our youth, if you will notice, refer to social media as the source of their news, refer to social media as the source of information about things they are interested in. And because the algorithms have already been so reached a level of sophistication where they can identify what you like, it is fed to you right into your social media platform of choice. Now, because it has been attacked, traditional journalists, us, our own work, has been attacked as false, as fake news. Today, many people cannot tell, is this fake news or is this real and factual? The same survey also showed that 69% of Filipinos believe that the problem of fake news in media is a very serious one, and that many people are not sure when they see news coming on your social media platforms or on TV. There's always that question, baka fake news. It has become not a mantra, but a question in the back of your mind, asking, baka fake news ito. There's always that second thought. The trust level has been seriously lowered. And originally in December 2021, 60% thought that it was in serious danger, but after that survey, it went up to 69%. For example, the COVID-19 outbreak sparked what the WHO called an infodemic, aside from the pandemic, which they defined as an overwhelming amount of information on social media and websites. And they cited that there were many, many false statements that were being put on social media. And I think all of us here have seen those, one or two of those statements. For example, it ranged from the conspiracy theory that the virus is a man-made bioweapon, and that it was made in a laboratory in China, and that China is really the source of this virus, and that it spawned a lot of hatred and distrust for China. Two, for example, another report that 100,000 have died from the disease. In our elections, in our current elections today, because of COVID and because of all of the health protocols in place, it will be harder for candidates to do traditional campaigning. Although there are now rallies that are being held, it is only slowly coming into the fore. But it will be difficult for them to conduct what they used to do in the past. So social media, again, this, I don't know if it's a scourge on us or if it is a blessing in disguise, but social media will become an even more important and critical platform for the candidates' messaging. Studies have shown that Vice President Robredo is the largest victim of disinformation, carrying negative messaging, beginning with Lenny Lugaw and that wala namang nagawa, walang alam, babae lang siya, and all of this messaging comes through social media. Marcos Jr. is the biggest beneficiary of misinformation, carrying positive messaging, such as martial law was the golden age of Philippine history, that there were no abuses, human rights abuses during the time of Marcos, that agriculture had its golden age during the time of martial law. And these statements that VP Lenny is the one that is being attacked most, and Marcos Jr. is the one that is benefiting from the messaging, is according to fact checks done by CheckPH, which started in January, just this January 2022. to which Probe is a member of this fact checking that is happening today. So the next question that we have is, what can we do as citizens, as individuals? What can we do? Well, the first thing is that the general rule is that you check before you click. Verify before you pass on. Today, usong-uso yung please share, please pass. And in fairness to all concerned, I think it is our responsibility to check before you click. And how do we do this? What are the telltale signs of something that is fake? First of all, they tell us that faked in a message that's being passed, or in something that you would like to pass on, sometimes there are fake website addresses. And it is important for us to compare the address that is being used with the actual website address in the homepage of whichever they are quoting. For example, if it's from the Inquirer, if it's from the New York Times, if it's from the Guardian, it is important for us to check, is the website address accurate? Because that could be a telltale sign of fake news. Second, sometimes the author is anonymous. They don't have an author, or they use a generic name, Pedro de la Cruz or Juan de la Cruz, or extremely well-known, Rodrigo Duterte, or some other name that we are familiar with. Fake sites may use unknown names, generic names, to avoid bylines that will give rise to suspicion and cue you to be more suspicious, and you will scrutinize the address. So sometimes they don't use any byline, so that you just don't pay attention to the byline. Sometimes the article misrepresents or misquotes its sources. They want to cite reputable sources because it's a very effective way of making your argument seem more credible. Like you say, if it is from let's say the New York Times, then you say, oh, this must be true because I'm sure they do fact checking. Sometimes it does not. Oftentimes, fake news entries do not accurately reflect the sources that it uses. In a traditional setting, for example, in TV stations, in newspapers, they have editors who fact check, who vet, who double check, who cross check data that is being produced. And they are like gatekeepers that make sure that the information coming out is accurate. But these fake news articles or fake news items do not have fact checkers and do not have editors to vet. Another way to check is the article contains spelling and grammatical errors. And again, without editors who check these things, that it's correctly spelled, that the names are accurately mentioned, the fake news items sometimes fall into not having the correct spelling or the correct numbers. So all of these little items that we can use to help us check for fake news are important. And as individuals, that is something that we can do. In the end, I think the main words here are, we must be vigilant. We cannot take anything for granted. And I think all of us have been victimized by very exciting, very nice looking posts that we share right away, instantly. Now that check.ph is telling us, please be more conscious and check on the data. Vigilance is very important. Awareness of what is happening around us, and double checking sources, not just one, but several. Usually in the traditional newsroom, we go for 3 sources. If there are opposing sides, we check somebody who is for, somebody who is against, and somebody who is in the middle or who is moderate in terms of the issues. Multiple sources are very good to help keep you from being faked. On that note, I wish to thank you again for your kind invitation to share with you a little bit about what is bothering us in media today, which is fake news. All of us have probably been victimized one or the other, but there is a way out. And vigilance and multiple sources and checking what we read and what we pass on is the secret to slaying the dragon. Marami pong salamat sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cheche Lazaro, and of course to Ms. Love Basiliote and Ms. Myla Villanueva for your very thought-provoking messages. Now let me turn over the digital stage to our very own Ms. Marilu Cristobal, Chairperson and President of Multinational Investment Bank Corporation, who will moderate our open forum with Dr. William Yu, representing Ms. Myla, Ms. Love, and together with Ms. Love and Ms. Cheche. Malu, over to you.
Thank you, Jen. Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you to Myla, who unfortunately cannot join the open forum. Thank you to Love, and to Cheche for the great insights that you shared and for also agreeing to spend a little more time with us for the open forum. And we're very privileged also to have Dr. William Yu in lieu of Myla Villanueva, who we are certain can handle the questions just as well. I'll just take a bit of 30 seconds to mention that having Myla and Cheche and Love in today's GMM it's not without significance. It's really because, well, we all know that it's Women's Month and we wanted to shine the light on women achievers, and Cheche and Love and Myla are the best personifications of what women can actually accomplish. And on that note, let us get started with our open forum. And I want to start off with William. The PPCRV has done exhaustive review of systems, processes, the general environment within which the elections will be conducted. And based on your findings, what should we as responsible voters be vigilant and in fact be fearful about?
All right, so thank you for that question, and thank you for inviting me as well to stand in for Myla. So I hope I do her justice in this session. So first off, in any election system or in any system in general, it is a sequence of controls that allow us to ensure that things are going on as they should be going on, that the system is behaving as it was designed to behave. That is true for systems like your computer and your laptops, but that is also true for complex systems like elections. That being said, there are many activities that we still have to do to ensure that the elections are clean, right? There are some activities that have already been done, such as the source code review, which officially ends today. Actually, it's the last day of the source code review, which is one of those activities where observers and representatives from political parties can actually look at the source code that's being used for the system. The trusted build exercise has also been completed, the hardware acceptance test. Now, ongoing at the moment are activities that we also should be observing, such as ballot printing, the pre-lat, which is essentially a end-to-end machine and ballot test. And of course, nearer election day, final testing and sealing. Then we also have the election day activities itself. And after the election, the PPCRV will do the unofficial parallel count, and there will also be the random manual audit. Now, we can't say things are clean until all of that is done and the activities are done. But so far, we seem to be on track, right? There was just some hiccups with respect to access to for example, ballot printing, right? It came out in the news. There was some issue with that because it took some time to actually grant
66% apparently of the ballots have been printed without the benefit of observers, notwithstanding what the law and the regulations stipulate.
That is right. So there are some activities that we should have been given access earlier, right? And there are some activities that are still to be done. Now, all is not lost yet, because of course there are still things that we can do to ensure things are going as planned. So for example, to check that there are no excess ballots used during the election, we can also do a post-election audit where we check the number of ballots that were inserted into particular machines and see if they exceed the number of registered voters. Fortunately for us, the project of precincts, which is a database of all the clustered precincts in the country, is published, and the number of registered voters is also published information. So these are things that we can audit during the election and after the election. Of course, it would have been nicer.
And are
if
we
just
going to be
observed
auditing this?
Yes,
Are we
well,
saying just two things? Are we saying that with this audit and a few other control measures that can be taken, could actually already disabuse us of any notion of irregularity in the conduct of the printing without the benefit of observers?
It could, but of course that is outside the fact that observers have the legal right to observe printing, right? So there are two problems here. Now, we can ensure that there are no excess voters in a particular precinct because we can compare the number of cast votes, right? There is an E indicator in the machine. If you have a poll watcher, you can actually see that, and you can actually observe those proceedings. It's just harder because you have to do it per precinct, as opposed to if you observe the actual ballot printing. So there are layers of
Why were we not
controls.
able? Why was PPCRV not able to flag that at the very onset?
Well,
I mean, we were
right?
PPCRV
Yeah,
was sort of caught off guard.
No. So we did. So as part of our accreditation request, which we actually filed last year, we already asked for those things, including being able to
They
observe
violated.
printing and pre-lab. Yeah. So we did, but it took a while to act on those requests. And of course, the reason behind it is pandemic protocols and COVID came to fore, but we still made those requests. So rest assured, we didn't actually wait until it hit the media. We already did. As a matter of fact, we already have numerous letters to COMELEC to basically.
Were you stonewalled?
There were not, I wouldn't say stonewalled because there are replies, except that, it's also a negotiation.
But
like,
the
for
replies
example,
were not what you had expected.
Yeah. So just to say that it wasn't granted right away, right? And there are requirements. For example, they wanted all the observers to be pre-registered and subject to PCR tests X hours before. So there was a whole set of requirements that we were trying to negotiate. That is it possible just to do?
And in the process of
antigen tests?
renegotiation, it's sort
So there
of
was a back
the
and forth.
can was kicked down the road, and 66% had been printed by the time this went public. And I wanted to go to Cheche in this regard. What's the role of journalists? I mean, investigative journalists would be keeping tabs of all that's happening at the COMELEC, given the environment that we're working within. So what has the journalists,
Well,
what have they done or failed to do?
The journalists they have a responsibility to be vigilant, no? To be the
Yes.
representatives of the general public. They have to question them based on what they feel the public that they serve want to know. And yes, they have to, I think, there are many groups that are after COMELEC. They're always constantly asking for appointments to interview COMELEC officials. And I think the transparency factor here is clouded by some of their recent actions, for example. So the level of trust has to be there to be able to get a fair amount of coverage without the suspicion of you're already setting us up for cheating. Yes, it is the responsibility of media persons to question, to find out why
done its part adequately.
Yes, and I think that they have done that, haven't they? I think media has done that. The public clamor has been shown to be very effective. I think we have seen that in some of the rallies that we are observing from afar, that numbers in rallies have been a very good indicator of the amount of involvement that the public wants to have in this election. So in that sense, they are functioning also as watchdogs. The public is functioning as watchdogs.
We are in this at this time, the country has become even more divided in this election period than it was at the start. And so, how should a journalist navigate this increasingly polarized and toxic environment?
Our responsibility is to view it as fairly as we can. But I'd like to start out by making a statement that there's no such thing as an unbiased report.
Yes.
There's no such thing as that. Everybody has his own biases, like Love was saying, based on our orientation, our education, what we learned at home, even the language we speak is something that we imbibe as we live on a daily basis. So every reporter has his bias. But that's why you have gatekeepers in traditional media establishments. That's why there are editors that will say, no, this is too biased an opinion, go out and interview somebody else. Or yes, you're on the correct path, but you have to get an opposing view to be able to provide balance for your story. That's why they're there. Now, with everybody being his own gatekeeper, like I can put on my social media account my opinion about this.
Because social media is unfiltered.
It's unfiltered and everybody is a journalist. So we have now
So the gatekeeper becomes yourself.
Yes. You decide what you're going to put out there. You yourself can say, this is breaking news.
Yes.
You can take a shot, for example, of a crowd from very close up and say there are 500,000 people, right? When a journalist probably will take a shot up close from a traditional house and take a shot from way up and say it looks like 500,000, but in reality it is 10,000.
Yes. I want to go to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to go to Love here because you did mention values. And PPCRV has come out with the 16 values that were supposed to have been culled from the Constitution, if I got my information right. Makatao, makadiyos, makakalikasan, all these values that we really have to hold dear to our hearts. But I'm wondering, Love, are these values as they are promoted? Is this campaign of PPCRV falling on fertile ground? Is, for example, the public school system's curriculum, is it instilling these values in the students? And I want to move a question further. There seems to be an disconnect or dissonance between what students are being taught and what they are witnessing and what they're experiencing. So how do you make those values stick in this environment of great inconsistencies?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question, Malu. Very tough, ang daming layers. But just the first one. So the values that are in the Constitution are actually also reflected in the DepEd's 10-point agenda. They also have like the values there and reflected. So in theory, our education system, public education system, actually does advance these values, or they teach these values to our public school students especially. But as you mentioned, what's in theory does not necessarily get applied in real life. So when it comes, same with curriculum, there is a written curriculum, but then taught curriculum is also different. I actually want to add another layer to that. So just when it comes to, for example, history and connecting it to what Cheche said about fake news and, on social media.
Alternative facts.
Alternative facts. It's very hard, for example, to teach the value of honesty when, for example, when we talk about the martial law years, in the textbooks, in the curriculum, there are all of these competing facts. And during a review of textbooks that currently exist, for example, the content there are just not factual. They maybe I will use the misinformation. So let's just assume that there was no bad intent. Maybe they were also misinformed, the textbook writers. But right, like how do you actually teach the value of honesty when, in fact, in the textbooks, it's not reflected there that Marcos stole money and that's wrong. And also teachers are not necessarily trained to push the boundaries when it comes to whenever we teach history. So we always just, whenever it's like history classes, it's always the chronology of events. But we need to teach our kids how to actually situate these events, think critically, okay, what are the implications of that to the present, and what the implications of the present are on the future. And so there are just a lot of levels and layers that need to be reconciled, the written curriculum versus the taught curriculum, and even all the inputs like the teachers, the textbooks. To your third question on how to make values stick, this is really tough because schools are competing with so many other sources of information and influence. So actually our students are not just influenced by their teachers. They're very influenced by their peers.
Yeah.
And so,
Yes,
and even,
yes.
on social media, and even peers whom they don't know. So like a random person from, like across the world. So I think this is maybe a challenge that we should all take on, not just for schools, because schools are playing a losing game. Because, if a teacher is competing with like a TikTok star, we know who will win in that game.
It's an uphill climb, no? I'll go back to Cheche on that matter, but first let me go to William. William, how are you with all of this? You talk about fake news, you talk about lockdowns, the inability to have face-to-face interaction, the rise of social media. How is PPCRV approaching its role differently for these elections compared to previous elections that you were equally involved in?
Yeah. So good question as well. And we've of course we've talked about it many times, and we've done the execution as well. One of the biggest concerns we had was recruiting of volunteers, right? Because again, PCRV would not exist if we didn't have volunteers. And part of the challenge of the pandemic is our traditional base of volunteers may not be able to volunteer in this coming election because of health reasons, right? So that was a top of mind thing. Even when the pandemic hit, it was still early 2020. It was the first thing that came to mind. Now, fortunately for us, I think as an organization, the youth stepped up, right? So whatever loss of our traditional volunteer base had, we do have a new influx of new volunteers who are younger. And as Lovely mentioned, the TikTok generation. So what we did is we simply adopted, right? Whatever they like to use, we have to like to use. I mean, PPCRV did not have a TikTok, Instagram, and all of Kumu accounts in the past, right? We were just in Facebook, and my daughter told me once, Dad, Facebook is for titos and titas. Right?
It's going to date me. I'm not active in Facebook anymore.
Right? I thought it was modern. Right?
Because it dates you.
Yeah. So that being said, we have to adjust, right? So if they prefer watching a training session as opposed to doing it in just Facebook, we're doing it in Kumu, for example. So again, we follow the venues, we follow the channels. And for us, media, and I personally believe technology is neither good nor evil. I think we should be using it to the maximum extent. Now, of course, the controls and it's used in the wrong way, and that's when it becomes bad. So we've done that. So we've done adjusting. Now, we still hope election day is something you cannot shortcut with technology. You have to show up at the polling place and you have to vote. Now, whether we can recruit, as Myla mentioned, our goal of 300,000 volunteers, that is to be seen.
Deploying them across the country.
across the
Especially, I
country.
guess,
So
in
far, I think we're
hotspots,
going
no?
to make it.
Oo.
Yeah, so it's a lot, but I think we're going to make it. I think we're going to exceed it, actually. Although, just for reference, in 2016, we nearly got 500,000. So we've set a lower bar for ourselves now, given pandemic and certain uncertainties. But we have to make adjustments. Again, the target, we are targeting more youth volunteers. We are using their channels. We're reaching out to them more. And for example, like venues like this, all our training is all online. It's via Zoom, it's via YouTube, Facebook. And again, of course, in the spirit of transparency, we publish all our materials. If you miss a session, you can watch it in YouTube and so on and so forth. So we try. I mean, I don't know if it's sufficient, but at least we try. Now, what I think we're having trouble with, and Ms. Cheche mentioned it a while ago, is the battle against disinformation and misinformation.
Yes.
That one is where it's hard because we create, for example, we have lovely materials on the 16 values based on the Constitution, which thank you for mentioning it a while ago. And after you watch that video in YouTube, you get a political ad. That is not, that is either misinformation or disinformation without mentioning what the ad is about. So it's so difficult because, yes, you spend so much time and effort creating nice material, talking about values, and the immediate after video is something that's not telling the truth.
Let me throw another question at you, William. Let's talk about massive cheating, which I think is a concern for all of us. And within your mandate and the resources you have at your disposal, how do you address this? And when does massive cheating happen? Before the elections? When does it hit its peak? Before the elections, during the elections, or after, right after the elections?
Right. So lately, at least with the advent of automation, after the elections has become hard. So the traditional dagdag bawas has become hard, if not impossible to do, because we do things like the UPC, right? We check the printed piece of paper, we have a poll watcher, and we check the results that were transmitted.
So the credibility of the system is preserved.
Yes. So we compare the actual proclaimed or used results with the results that came out at each polling, each precinct, and we make that comparison. That's what we do as PCRB. Now, any political party can do that, but we're doing it for the whole country, and that's why we make it a point to get as many precincts as possible. That one has made dagdag bawas hard to do, because if you change something in the middle, then that precinct result will not match the national result, right? So that's what we do, and that's one of our key activities, and that is if not the most volunteer-intensive activity we have. But there are still cases where, for example, we have no watchers, right? There are still precincts where we have no watchers. There are some precincts where we do not get the fourth copy, and there are some precincts where, let's just say, there are command vote precincts. Right?
Will you know ahead of time if you will not have people in certain precincts so that the various associations who want to marshal their own resources can assist in fielding volunteers for you?
Yes, so we know that, and actually we know that now, right? So we already know, for example, certain parts of the country where we have challenges getting volunteers. As you probably already know, we are church-based, so our biggest base of volunteers come from places with churches. Now, places with no Catholic churches, we have to make other arrangements. So, for example, in Muslim Mindanao and in the ARN region, we have civil society partners that are not necessarily Catholic church-based. In certain areas.
So, in those areas, do you have partnerships? Do you have partnerships with other institutions that are present in those communities?
That is right. So we focus on those. So for example, if there's an area that we already know we don't have a presence with, for example, then we try to look for partners. Now, we have a strong base of, we've been watching elections for quite a while. We already have friends in certain places. But despite that, there are still areas that we still cannot cannot cover. There are some that are really just not safe for our volunteers, and we won't force them, right? So there are still challenges. I mean, we're trying to improve coverage, and this is not just by the way, just to clarify, it's not just in Muslim Mindanao where we don't have coverage.
Yes.
We have certain areas in the country where coverage is really difficult. Mountain barangays, island barangays. I don't even think we have a volunteer at the single precinct in Spratlys. Island, for example.
And how many voters will there be in the Spratlys?
I think there are 200 voters. I think there.
That's a lot.
It's not small. It's not
Yes.
small. It's barangay Kalalayan.
Can change
right?
the
So-
tide.
So that's the
Can
so
I go back?
so those are our challenges.
I do have a number of questions from the members, some that were relayed to me ahead of our meeting and a few others in the Q&A box. So before I shift to that, just one question to Cheche, and this is on fake news. Cheche, what happens if the government or the journalists themselves are the purveyors of fake news?
I think the same parameters apply. Check their sources. When we say double sourcing, several sources, you just don't rely on one. You double check an opposing view and then try to measure it against each other to be able to get a more three-dimensional view of the issue. But the same principles apply. I mean, the journalist, as I said earlier, on social media, all of us are journalists. Every single one of us has the same access rights as the next one, because I can post something now and you can post something now and we're exactly the same.
Yes.
Depending on who we are talking to, depending on the bubble that we are operating within. But I think among journalists, they're aware of who the fake news journalists are. There are, and maybe let's not call them journalists. Let's just call them individuals. Because right now,
envelopmental journalists.
Right now, with the onset of social media, we're all in the same footing because of the access. Because of the access.
Yes. The same platform, the same reach.
Exactly the same.
Yes.
Except those who are still in traditional media, in television stations, in radio stations, and in print stations. But as we know, all of these traditional media are, I don't want to use the word dying, but there's tough competition from social media. So journalists are reinventing themselves. They're trying to stay relevant by reinventing themselves and going into platforms where everybody is, where the popular audiences are. And really, that's social media. So you have followers in the millions, 1 million followers, 3 million followers. So if I say, I'm for giving everybody free vaccination, everybody of your 2 million followers will say, I am too.
Okay, let me try and go now to the questions in the chat box.
We have three questions,
I'm
Malu.
looking for an earlier question from Uni that I cannot seem to find now.
It was moved to the answered.
It was
box,
already
so
answered. Okay.
Yeah, maybe Love can repeat
Yes.
the answer to the question.
Okay. Very quickly, also, Love, maybe you can summarize what the question was and how you responded to it. The one of Uni.
Sure, I'll just read it so that it's quicker.
Okay, sure.
So Uni asked, do you also help shape and review the curriculum in our schools? The Philippines have been reported to lag in basic subjects like math. And her second question, do you also have projects aimed at developing the critical thinking skills of our youth? So my response to her was, yes, we do try to influence the curriculum by working with DepEd and CHED to have private sector representatives in the development of the curriculum. But ultimately, it's the DepEd and the CHED that actually come out with the official curriculum written.
But have you been successful in getting that presence?
Yeah, so the CHED, for example, there is now an administrative order mandating each of the curriculum panel to have private sector representatives for in the curriculum in what they call technical panels. So that's the panel that is in charge of coming up with minimum standards. So actually, I'd like to take this opportunity to tell your membership, if you have extra time, do please volunteer to be part of the curriculum panel so that your inputs are also included. And then as to Uni's second question about projects, yes, we do have a project currently that we are implementing called YouthWorks Philippines. It is a training and employment program for out-of-school youth. And then embedded in our training program is actually a life and core skills training that help the youth develop critical thinking skills, among others.
Very important. Here's a question from Tony Boy Umsiako, relate to me earlier. And he said, and this is and Dr. William or Cheche or Love, but maybe more to William. With the appointment of new COMELEC commissioners, most of them allies of the president, one of them a lawyer for one of the presidential candidates, and the logistics provider known to be a supporter of the president, how do we ensure that the elections will be fair and transparent and not rigged?
Right. So first, so again, good question and very relevant one. First answer is that we have controls beyond just watching the for example, logistics provider or a particular vendor of the system. The reason why these controls and processes are made is so that we can watch the election. Now, with respect to the specific concern about the logistics provider, first off, it isn't the first time they won, right? I believe they were a logistics provider in 2016. They were a logistics provider in 2019. I think the only difference is that instead of what COMELEC did previously was break it down into lots, so that there was no one provider that got all 3 lots, right? This is the first time they did one big lot and one provider won. Now, in response to that, we have always been given access to observe the logistics activities. So we have volunteers who go to these particular hubs and warehouses to check, for example, if the machines are really there, if the seal that was placed in the warehouse is still the seal that's in the factory, from the factory to the warehouse to the polling place, for example. So those are activities that are allowed for observers. Now, the challenge is CRV, as big as we are, cannot watch every warehouse and watch every ballot box. We may have some volunteers, more volunteers in one area versus fewer volunteers in other areas. And that's why we highly encourage other groups, especially the political parties, to actually send observers as well. Send observers to the warehouses, send observers to the plants, send observers for final testing and sealing so that they can see that the materials have not been tampered with.
There's a similar question. I'm sorry, I had to cut you because you're talking about the support that you need, because there's a question here in that regard, and the member wants to know which areas you will need volunteers for, and for the volunteers, what kind of protection do you provide to them, especially, I guess, if they get assigned in hotspots?
All right. So again, another very relevant, and we always get that question. So first off, as a volunteer organization, again, we're dependent on volunteers. The easiest way to volunteer for PPCRV is to go to your nearest parish. That's the easiest
go to the parish, yes.
Right? Because we are a fairly decentralized organization. Every parish and every diocese
go to the parish where you
office.
Belong.
Yes.
And is it likely that you will then be assigned in that parish?
Yes, the parish would be the one to know what roles are available.
For that area, for the area that they're covering.
Correct. So we have parishes that cover large geographical areas. Now, NCR might not be a good example because we have a lot of parishes within a small geographical area. So one parish can just get assigned a voting center. However, for certain parishes like those in the province, they cover a really large geographical area. And in those cases, for example, they will say, can you please cover town X, town Y, town Z, and can you be a voter's assistance desk volunteer or a poll watcher or a logistics handler, or can you also watch the logistics? There's like a lot of activities that can be done. I don't think we have enough volunteers to do them all. So we have to prioritize. Now, each parish and each diocese will prioritize.
Just go to your parish and they will tell you what they need and where
They
the
will,
assignments will be.
specify the roles, etc.
Yes.
Now, there may be some parishes that I think at this point have not mobilized yet. Right? So not all parishes have mobilized at this point. So for those parishes who have not mobilized yet, you can go to the diocese, right? That's one, if you have access to it, or you can visit, I think we have a website. You can visit our website and you can actually make a request there. So either Facebook or website, and you can make a request there. So
you
that's
have to take an
volunteers.
active role in that.
So that's the basic volunteer. Now, there are some activities that are done at the command center. For example, encoders.
Where is the command center?
It will be at the UST Quadricentennial Pavilion. So we moved from Pope Pius, the iconic Pope Pius, and now we are in UST for this particular election. So that we can do social distancing and the like, because it was quite small. So for the command center roles, you can actually volunteer at the PPCR website or Facebook page. So these roles include quality assurance, encoders, and the like. So there's a large need for large volunteers as well. Then if you have like special skills, for example, then you can also reach out to specify that. Like, for example, our partnership with Phoenix, for example, in e-vote buying and how to protect against that. That's a special, so we can have a special discussion. Again, there are many ways to cheat.
Or something as basic as sending food.
That one is at the command center. But again, it depends on where you're from. If your member is from Cebu, then you talk to the diocese there. They also need food. Again, I don't think volunteers will work on an empty stomach, so we have to feed them as well.
Okay, here's a sorry.
You asked the question about COMELEC co-commissioners, right? Yes. So that one, I just like to remind people that in the run-up to the 2016 election, all commissioners were also appointed by that president at that time. So it's not a unique time in history. I think the current president has just been extra lucky because he got the same thing for the Supreme Court and he's also doing it for COMELEC. But I think it's a fluke of timing because COMELEC commissioners and the chairman have fixed 7-year terms. However, if a COMELEC commissioner or a chairman resigns, the replacement just completes the remaining term. And since appointments are not done right away, the staggering of those terms, I mean, I think originally when it started, it was like you only replaced half at any given time. But because people don't get replaced right away, it's suddenly aligned, right? And in this case, I think this is one of the hardest cases because the chairman and 2 commissioners leave on February of the year of an election. So that is probably the most jarring version. So
but I guess the concern is qualification.
Yeah, so I think qualification-wise, there are many roles in COMELEC, some technology, mostly legal, and good experience, right? So picking an election lawyer makes sense, right? Picking, for example, the current chairman, I think, is from Muslim Mindanao, so that also helps because most of the hotspots, I don't think they call it hotspots anymore. I think they call it areas of interest are in Muslim Mindanao. So it actually makes sense to pick somebody from there because he or she will be aware of the problems there. So I think there are talents and skills that each commissioner can provide. I think we as independent-minded people and yourselves, for example, just have to watch. Right?
So Tony Boy, there is no reason for you to be concerned. But you can be vigilant.
It's a collegiate body, so you have to get them all, right? So again, we just watch. And like anything, I mean, the proof is in the doing, right? So they have to do the job first.
And here's a question for Cheche from another member. And the member said, there seems to be a disconnect between pictures of rallies that show massive turnout for one candidate and then survey results that will show overwhelming support for another candidate.
Yes.
What is the ground feel? I mean, you have a feel, at ground level.
I think
is this disconnect coming from?
Yeah.
And are survey results credible? I think that is the last
I don't-
question of this member.
I don't feel qualified enough to answer that question because I've also asked myself that question while looking at the survey results and looking at the pictures from the rallies. You really wonder that there is that disconnect. What the media crews are doing now is that they are continuing to cover. They're all out in different rallies, trying to cover and trying to cover all of the 5 major candidates for the presidency. And they're covering their rallies and telling their stories like that. But about the discrepancy, I really don't know how to answer that. About the credibility of the surveys, these survey companies have been doing these surveys for all of the major elections that we have had. And they have pretty much called it accurately in the past. So it is an area of concern for people who are watching the survey and what's happening on the ground. The reports that we get for what's happening on the ground is that the numbers are surprising, that the enthusiasm and that the vibe that they get on the ground has been extraordinarily different from what they have covered in the past. But of course, like I said before, there's no such thing as an unbiased report. We don't know how much of that. We have to cut the biases.
Are
And
there regulations on surveys? Like, for example, is there a moratorium on surveys so many weeks before the election so that you do not unduly
I think
create
there
a
is.
kind
I think there is. I don't know the specifics, but I think there is a rule about when the last survey can be done.
Can come out. Okay.
Can come out. Yes.
Here's a question for Love, and this is the same question, but translating it or transposing it to the campuses. And the question is, what's your feel among the schools with regard to the presidential candidates or the students, perhaps, no? How has the school curriculum affected student preferences? And the other question is, what is the biggest influence to the youth voters, and how do you help them handle fake news? This is from the, I guess, from the academy.
Yeah, no, so I think, was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago, there were a lot of education, like university presidents actually coming together, expressing their support, signing a statement, expressing their support for a candidate. And it's overwhelmingly, for Lenny. That was what was reported. But in terms of, I guess, like ground feel, first, okay, we need to distinguish because education is you're really talking about kindergarten to
Yes, maybe the
university student.
Student vote. I mean,
yes, if
maybe
you're
first-time voters.
Yeah, right. So if you're looking at first-time voters, university voters, we don't actually have data on that, and I'm also not qualified in terms of answering I guess another and the question asked in a different way. But I guess my contribution to the discussion will be, the surveys and the photos use different methodologies, right? Like the surveys, it's very quantitative. They say they do random sampling, it's statistical. The photos we're seeing are in a way anecdotal data, right? Qualitative data. And so I think for us, we need to, in a way, also reconcile these different methodologies and then not basically be like overly swayed by one methodology or the other. So what Ms. Cheche was saying earlier, double check your sources, get all of these sources of information and then decide for yourself. So on the ground feel for the students, frankly, I don't really have data on both the qualitative and the quantitative, because remember, our students have not been doing face-to-face classes.
Yes,
so we also don't know,
yes.
we can't really visit schools and see how they feel. But if you look at social media behavior, you also need to distinguish between those who have access to technology and social media and the kinds of like voter behavior that they have versus like young voters who are from maybe like class D or C, D, E, who probably are maybe not in schools and also exhibit different voter behavior. So I think we need to look at the qualitative and quantitative data with a grain of salt, and then like decide and think critically on our own. So
we've run out of time, and we still have. I apologize to those who raised questions that I was unable to relate to our speakers. Perhaps we can, I don't know, we'll find a way to get them to the speakers and then bring back to you their responses. So I need to conclude this by just asking each of you, the speakers, just one final word. However you want to, whichever issue you want to address, but short and sweet. I will start with William and then Cheche and then Silav.
All right, so thank you very much. So my final word is, again, this is our elections, right? So choose your candidates wisely, choose your choose with your conscience. It's lovely mentioned. It isn't final until it's final, right? So until May 9, 2022, until we cast your vote, things can change, right? So surveys, pictures, we can look at them, right? But I think we should make our own choices. Second key message is, of course, volunteers. We need a lot of volunteers. So the PP survey is making this call out for volunteers. Please volunteer at your nearest parish or visit us at our website and our Facebook page. Thank you very much.
Cheche?
For me, the key word here is vigilance. I think that all of us, because we are all concerned about this particular elections, some people have called it a do or die election. I think that if we are vigilant and if we watch what's happening in our surroundings and do our duty as citizens, I think we will, at the end of the elections, win or lose, we would have served our country well. But if we just make others take over from us and just sit back and say, bahala na, then we will get what we deserve. So for me, the key word is vigilance.
Thank you. And Love?
For me, the key word is vote. And tied to that keyword are actually three things that I hope voters do take into consideration. First, be curious. Don't take things, as they are, like ask questions. Then be critical. Given all of these information that you get, what is the best way forward? And then lastly, please vote for what you believe in and what you hold dear, rather than, just being like overly nega. So yes, vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you very much to our moderator extraordinaire, Malu, and to our panelists for the open forum. Thank you once again, Dr. William, Love, and Cheche. At this point, I'd like to invite our President Mike Guarin, to give a token or a plaque of appreciation to our speakers. President Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeng. So allow me to first read the contents of our appreciation. So it will be the same for all the three speakers. The Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines presents this certificate of appreciation to our dear speakers with gratitude for their insightful knowledge, valuable time, and presence during the third general membership meeting of PHENEX during International Women's Month with the theme, Inang Bayan, the importance of a responsible electorate in a democracy. Given on the 16th day of March 2022, signed by yours truly, as well as Chairperson of the Women in Finance Committee, Ms. Danielle Del Rosario, and the Liaison Director for Women in Finance, Ms. Esther Terry Magleo. So again, we'd like to give this in order of their presentation. First to Ms. Myla C. Villanueva, Chairperson of PPCRV and the MDI Group Holdings, represented during the Q&A by Dr. William Yu. Thank you very much, Dr. William Yu. And then followed during the presentation, I would like to give our certificate of appreciation to Ms. Lovelane Basiliote, Executive Director, Philippine Business for Education. Thank you very much again, Ms. Love. And then last but not the least, our certificate of appreciation to Ms. Cecilia, Ms. Cheche A. Lazaro, founding president, Probe Productions Incorporated. Again, thank you very much for gracing our event. And I'm sure that it was a very informative and time well spent for not just us panelists, but as well as all our members and attendees. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Mike, and to our speakers and panelists. At this point, I'd like to call in our Punong Abala, the chairperson of our Women in Finance Committee, Ms. Danielle Del Rosario, to deliver her closing message.
Thank you so much, Cheng. I think you will all agree with me that today was definitely a very thought-provoking session. Well, good afternoon to our esteemed roster of panelists, Phoenix leaders and members, and to all of you joining us today. A warm welcome as well to all our new Phoenix members. I am Danielle Del Rosario, and I'm honored to be serving as the chairperson for the Women in Finance Committee of Phoenix this year. We are delighted to be your sponsoring committee during the International Women's Month this March. And to our Phoenix President Mike, to our Phoenix Board and Phoenix Foundation Board, to all our Phoenix members, thank you for being with us today. Please join us as we give our sincere thanks to our dear panelists today, who are trailblazing women, and of course, Dr. Yu, breaking the bias in their own right. As Malu boldly mentioned, they are the personification of women empowerment. Ms. Cheche Lazaro, founder of Probe Productions and the Probe team, Ms. Love Basiliote, Executive Director, Philippine Business for Education, and of course, Ms. Mylia Villanueva, who was ably represented by Dr. William Yu for PPCRB. Of course, I would also like to acknowledge and thank our Women in Finance Liaison Director, Terry Magleo, who's indefatigable, and our Vice Chairs, Nikki Tang and Mildred Bitangcol. Of course, our hardworking Programs and Meetings Committee Chair, Net De Jesus, also joined by Tony Boyan Chaco and Nate Gosek, who was very involved in planning for this session. Of course, our fastidious Phoenix team, we thank you, led by Aljon, Jeff, and Mike, and of course, the rest of the team. And of course, I would like to thank our Master of Ceremonies, past President Jang Pascual, and our moderator par excellence, Malu Cristobal, who has obviously done her research before today. So getting to my brief message. Electorate is defined in the dictionary as all the people in a country or area who are entitled to vote in an election, while responsible is defined as having an obligation to do something or having control over or care for someone as part of one's job or role, or even more specifically, being the primary cause of something and so being able to be blamed or credited for it. And of a job or position involving important duties, independent decision-making, or control over others. When we combine the two words, electorate and responsible, and reflect on our theme, Inang Bayan, the importance of a responsible electorate in a democracy, we can deduce that as we are all the people who are entitled to vote, it is also our responsibility and duty to make the right choices as the primary cause for an election result, and we too are to be blamed or hopefully credited with a good result. As mentioned by our speakers today, Mike opened the floor mentioning the KPMG study on advancing the future of women in business. Of course, I like that, Mike. Thank you for that. And Terry gave wonderful and inspiring opening remarks, really inspiring us to uphold democracy and how important this is, not just for us, but for the generations that follow us. And then we heard Myla, and of course, Dr. William. We are so happy to have you. You reminded us of our need to do our part. We need 300,000 to 500,000 volunteers to help in 700 precincts. And while Dr. William gave us one inspiring point that the youth has stepped up and PPCRB has been able to continue to adapt to the channels that are better received by society and our voting population, we all have to do our part. So then we listened to Love, and she retold to us that education and values formation are lifelong journeys that start from the home and are peppered with various and vast influences from larger society and now social media. How do we help the youth, our children, to become critical thinkers rather than just sponges who absorb any and all information? We need to be fastidious in the examples that we set for our youth and our children. We can also volunteer to be resource persons for the private sector to shape the curriculum development. And of course, we are all so happy to hear Ms. Cheche Lazaro, who we all miss, Vigilance is so important in a time where the assumption of truth in news is sadly no longer valid. What are our biggest safeguards? Ourselves as critical thinkers comprising the responsible electorate. With sometimes such a big disconnect in what we see from photos or survey results, critical thinking and discernment will be our best and first line of defense. So we must all make ourselves aware and active, and in doing such, not be bystanders to our future and the future of our children and their children. Borrowing from the line of Ms. Cheche's message, we are the gatekeepers. So allow me to end by sharing two quotes. The first is from John F. Kennedy, wherein he said, "The ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of all." Building awareness is key, but doing so will require fact-checking in order to dispel misinformation and stop disinformation. The second quote I want to share is from US Representative John Lewis. "The vote is precious. It is almost sacred. It is the most powerful non-violent tool we have in a democracy. Let us not allow our votes to be sold or lost. We have 56 days to ensure that we work together to protect Inang Bayan, our beloved motherland." Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you. Keep safe.
Thank you very much, Chair Danielle. Very eloquently said. At this point, to close our event for today, may I call once again our President, Mr. Mike Guarin, to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Chair Jeng. Again, that was a very inspirational closing message, Danielle. So I'd like to join this meeting. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a nice day and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone. See you at our next event.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.